In order for us to really see a sense of unity and purpose, and very importantly, for people to understand the history of struggle, the history of what it takes, the history of the level of sacrifice it takes in order to create real pressure and real change, that in itself is a generation worth of work.
Power is the ability to make things happen, and money is a great way to use power. But money is not the only way to use power. It's also possible for people to come together to make things happen. And we've seen that over and over again throughout history. Coming up, you'll join a conversation with Amber Hamilton, a regular guest of ours, to talk about philanthropy once again. This time, we're going to talk about the rising third wave of philanthropy, as well as the way people have used philanthropy to focus with laser efficiency on shifting the country we now live in, and what lessons that gives us about the way laser focus can really move systems in a way to help people. I'm Dr. Adriane Johnson-Williams, and this is Equitable. Hello, Amber Hamilton, regular Standpoint Consulting Equitable podcast guest.
It's an honor to be with you once again. Thank God we still here. We done made it another few
Seriously.
months, and we are here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again for having me. I absolutely love these conversations.
Me too.
So I hope others are enjoying them as much as we
Mm-hmm.
are.
Yeah, I'm just thrilled you keep saying yes, because I think having you back, you're the only person who I have back on a regular basis. No offense to anybody else. But I really think that the big topic we talk about is so pressing right now. Philanthropy is a
Absolutely.
very big deal.
And it's not just us. We're not crazy. Like everyone is having these conversations behind closed doors, and I'm thrilled that I get to have them out loud with you.
So, our philanthropic conversation for today um, really does connect to some work I've been doing already. So, my LinkedIn newsletter launched, and I've been talking about the lessons we can learn from the current political leadership, particularly the 47th administration um, of the President of the United States. And I know we like to think about leadership as people we look up to and people who have moral fortitude, but I am constantly reminding people that a leader is somebody people follow. And not everybody follows people we find morally acceptable, or some of us find. I mean, they find people morally acceptable. It's a different set of morals. So that leadership skills and leadership success does not have to match our thinking of morality. So, when it comes to philanthropy, something I've been really thinking about is how this current moment has happened. And if we only think about it over the last 50 years, what I see and what I have seen, even when I was more aware in the 80s, was that there were people who had decided that they didn't like the direction the country was going, and they set about changing it or reclaiming it in the language that I hear. And a lot of that was done using philanthropic dollars. So we all know the name, the Heritage Foundation, and that's the big one that we know about. But there are other philanthropic efforts that fund things that have to do with monetary policy and with issues that the Heritage Foundation doesn't address. Um, how we think about the military, right? There are all sorts of academics who were funded, right, over time. And so I want to start by talking about just your thoughts about what that demonstrates about the power of philanthropy and how people who are on the opposite side have failed to really concentrate efforts to solve any real problems we've identified.
This is such a rich topic. There's a very interesting book I read years ago called Dark Money about it, and it's just shows up my spine, and all of it is coming to fruition. So let's unpack the oligarchy, shall we? Um, you know, that Audre Lorde quote about, using the master's tools to destroy the master's house is so so real. Um, philanthropy truly, despite its rhetoric, can be used for a number of purposes. And I think we have allowed the rhetoric of philanthropy, the good work, the contributing towards the, whatever the mission statement and the alleged moral high ground appears to be, really distract us from the very simple question of where is this money going and who is making decisions about what that looks like. It's a very fundamental thing. And we have allowed all of the bells and the whistles and the conferences and the white papers and all of those things to distract us from the very fundamentals of that. And some of the research I'm doing now is trying to just get back to that, right? Get back to the fundamentals of who are on these boards, who are in the senior leadership, what is their background, what is their connection to certain causes and to certain things, where is their bread buttered, and then where is this money going? Um, and how can we hold up this practice of philanthropic, not only accountability, but fidelity? How can we align or match the things you say you are about to the things you have actually been about? And when we do that in the context of how the right has built this long lasting machine, it really is quite I don't want to elevate it to a level of genius because it's actually very fundamental. Like, they did everything kind of out loud and we just did not pay attention to it. But it was a alignment of allies, and it was a how do we move money in whatever way the money needs to be moved in order to create a machine that is not, it's not myopic. So it's not just, political power, it's not just social capital. It's all of these things moving together. And unlike, I think, a more progressive slate, they did not limit themselves to 501(c)(3)s, very importantly. Whether it was C4s or whether it was just candidate support, whether it was like, it was moving on every level. And we kind of sat there and watched it happen because we wanted to limit ourselves to very kind of old school traditional ways of moving in terms of it has to be C3 and it has to look like this in terms of the impact on reporting and the this and the that. It has to be this. And we got outplayed, we got outcoached, right? And so not only that, but there is no I'm gonna give the right some credit and some of these convenings that they had. They weren't sitting around, eating Crestless sandwiches, just talking about it. They were absolutely aligning and moving the money in formation. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. You gonna do this.
Yes. Do you think they had just really coherent they had a coherent plan. They had a vision that they could all buy into in some way or another. And I wonder if well, I imagine on the left, as it were, the middle, the center and the left, it's so diffuse. And there are still people who fundamentally believe in all of the isms, right? They're not people who fundamentally believe in the humanity of people who live in poverty or the humanity of people of color. So you can't really come up with a shared vision. It's not possible for people who have all the wealth and know better to have that singular vision.
That's interesting. And I think one example that kind of crystallizes this in many ways in my mind, and I'm still continuing to do some research, and I want to really talk to some people who are on the ground for this, is the Chan Zuckerberg initiative. Um, that when it first came out, it seemed on paper, like it was going to be, this progressive um, mover and shaker in terms of moving capital and education and health and a couple of other key ways. And then when I'm going to say um, Mark Zuckerberg announced his shift to the right, because I think it happened long before we saw it, but that's okay. Um, when it was announced, right, he started to amongst other things, break down this, engine that he had built through this initiative. And they said, okay, by the way, we're not going to fund any of that stuff anymore, and we're going to fire a bunch of people and yada yada yada, right? But then it was clear when he was starting to publicly align with the right, because that's where the power was residing. Um, then we saw the philanthropy instantly in a moment break down to follow his pursuits. And I really believe anything that you can disassemble that quickly to shift to something else wasn't really for that in the first place. We've certainly seen that happen with racial equity, right? And the money that was supposed to flow there, and how quickly the tides turned philanthropically. We've seen how many people did not get the money that they were promised. We've seen how quickly, and you and I have experienced um, personally, as leaders in organizations, how when the tide turns, it turns extremely quickly. But I think all of that is here to teach us some things. One is there's the obvious, we have to build our own tables and our own systems where we can protect the values they're in, and that's kind of obvious. But I think the comma that needs to come after that statement, um, for me, is that we need to build institutions, vehicles, capital, etc., that white supremacy and white dominance cannot take from us at a whim.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And we need to go into the building of those things with that in mind.
There's this idea, I think, that we have less money, so that means that we can't do it. But and while the amount of money does matter, the coherence, the laser focus matters, and we are absolutely missing that. I was watching a commercial or something. I don't know what it was, but they were talking about the Montgomery bus boycott. Oh, it was the show that President Obama is now producing with Larry David. Anyway, they were talking about the Montgomery bus boycott and how for a year, people didn't use the bus. I was saying, is there anything we can get a whole city for the black people not to do right now?
Like great personal sacrifice, right? Because this is when it was super hot. This is when it was raining. This is when your employer was threatening you. You better do this and do that. This is when they uh, put counter legislation in place, so saying, you can't take a cab more than this rate, or you can't, this is under tremendous, like, kind of personal sacrifice, that people continue to do these things. I agree with you. And this was over 400 days that people endured this. That's a long time when you are walking many miles to work in all kinds of weather, under all kinds of threat, and all of those things. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think to a degree we have our tolerance for personal sacrifice for collective benefit has kind of been withered away. But I think, and I'm working towards some additional writing on this. That's probably going to take me a while to articulate in the way that I need to. I think what we need to focus on, and this idea of how do we build practices, structures, vehicles that white supremacy and white dominance cannot take away from us. I think at the foundation of that is a different sense of purpose and unity, right? Because when we are unified, when we are truly unified, That is something nobody could take away from us because they've tried, and we know we have seen it work against the odds, right? So I think that needs to be, if we relate this back to the philanthropic space, this needs to be codified within us. But I think here's the other thing that sometimes we lose sight of, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's DEI, whether it's all of these moments and movements that we've had recently, the things that sometimes we have lost sight of is that this is not a campaign, it's not a moment. This is a multi-year, multi-dozens of years and generational strategy that has to be seated with us. It's not gonna have a win tomorrow, and it's gonna have a lot of setbacks, but we must have a guide, to your point, a guiding light and principle about where we are trying to move. I was reading, and the thing that really inspired me about this piece, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this because we talk about so much, um, but I was reading about a slave rebellion that was being seeded, right? And the leader of this rebellion said, listen, what we need is armed rebellion. We can't just kind of rely on what is happening in the abolition movement or this or that. We need to arm people. It has to be armed resistance. But here's the thing. In order to get all of the volunteers we need, get all of the arms, get us trained in secret, it's gonna take 10 years. And he said this while people were still enslaved, right? So they're living that reality every single day, day in, day out. Their children are being sold, they're being terrorized every single day. And he said, I'm telling you, this is going to take 10 years to pull together in a way that is meaningful and that we can actually win. And he started about the work of building essentially a secret army to do this. And in the middle of that, the Civil War kind of broke out. And so it kind of changed the game and it changed the strategy. But can you imagine trying to tell people in the middle of their torture, I'm going to put together something that's going to help you, but it's going to take another 10 years, right? That's a bold statement to
It
make.
really is a bold statement to make.
But at the same time, it was a realistic one in terms of what it would really take. And I think that's kind of part of the piece that we have lost a piece of. This is not going to be one grant cycle. This is not going to be 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. In order for us to just get the foundation of this right, you're talking at least a generation. And for me, the foundation is that sense of true unity, of historical context. We have so many folks who don't know the history of struggle and resistance. It is almost like a fairy tale to them. It's a piece of history that they may have heard or may have been taught at some point, but it hasn't really seeded and grounded with them. So we've got to invest in a full generation of relearning and a full generation of healing in order to get to a point where we're able to just start a new fight from there.
You know what else too? I've been thinking about how the 50 years of the conservative movement also came with a sense of entitlement. This idea that we deserve this. We think positively of ourselves. We believe we are right and we deserve this. And I know that there's so much demoralization and trauma and pain among some Black folk, and it has become either internalized anti-Blackness, that is, we can't do anything, this is our fault. In other instances, it has fueled rugged individualism and a commitment to the American mythologies of individualism and how capitalism is going to save us. And I wonder what is unlike the conservative movement, I think there's a part of it that requires that we heal and we begin to understand that our reality is not just the result of our choices, because some of it is. It is even more so the result of the systems in which we live.
Absolutely. You know, you said that beautifully, and I think to the point we're making, there's kind of a slow lane and there's a faster lane. I think the slow lane is the true healing work that needs to happen, the educational work that needs to happen in terms of how these systems have an impact on us and what how history has informed where we sit today. And I think the faster lane, though, is for us to be able to say, our world is shifting underneath our feet. And what we're not going to do is allow the systems to be continue to be rebuilt around us in a way that continues not to serve us. So this brings us back to kind of where philanthropy is today, and this idea that there's like a third wave of philanthropy rising, right? While we are healing ourselves and treating ourselves and trying to build something for the long run stronger, those of us who understand how powerfully this tool can be used for us or against us must stand in the gap. And we must say we will not allow a third wave of oligarchs and tech billionaires to come in and allow this money to to be used on its surface to help us, but really in its roots to harm us. We will stand in the gap. We will speak up, and we will ensure that this power will be used more meaningfully. And if it isn't, we will do whatever is necessary to make sure that this will not continue to be used to harm us. Um, we've got to kind of have that agreement amongst us. We've kind of got to sit in a room and really figure out what does that mean for us and who is the we? Who are the people and positions and institutions we will use to be super clear about that fight?
I was in a conversation with a group of Black women in business here in Memphis. And as you well know, we have XAI, who had, dropped off, and for some of us appeared out of nowhere. It was like a group of people had been sitting around planning this, and by group of people, I mean white men with money or white men who wanted money, sitting around planning this and then dropping it on Black leadership who just said, well, okay, since it's done, and now it's killing Black people. And I've been fascinated by how they also started just passing out money, just passing it out, just dumping money. Mostly, they used, one Black man in particular, who shall remain nameless, to go out and find Black-led organizations or organizations that serve Black folks and start giving them money. And I thought, yeah, money, as they say, is green, although it's a little bluish these days. But money is green and we need it and it will help us do this good work. And I'm thinking about what is the line between not all money is good money and I can do good with this bad money. And I feel like this is one of those situations where upon reflection, this is not good money. Like this is not, they should not be able to wash this.
No, this is Nino Brown giving out turkeys in the hood. No.
They still gonna shoot
No.
it up.
Right. And make everybody a crackhead. No, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
you are totally right because there is a line there, and sometimes it's hard to navigate because we all know philanthropic money, just like all money, is dirty money to a degree. And so, like, you're dealing with money that is fundamentally has been extractive and exploitative in order to get there, right? But at the same time, you're at a point where you know it's there, and you know if you move as smoothly as you can, while you're never going to use that tool to completely destroy the master's house, you can use it to build some things that will allow you, and the people part of it, right? The people power of it will take over, and that is really what will destroy systems that are meant to destroy us, right? And so I totally understand what you mean and saw it happen. I was very disturbed, and continue to be disturbed about the conversation that's happening. But I think, there definitely been some out front leaders who, as soon as it started to pop up, said, no, this is not right. This is not a good thing. They are not, telling the full and complete truth about the implications of all of this. There are people who have said this person has made a promise to, clean up all the environmental, negative impacts of this, but he is under absolutely no real obligation to do so. So it is nothing but words, and that has completely shown itself to be the case. And so we have to continue to have the conversation with community on all levels, and we have to continue to, particularly where people have felt powerless, refer back to the blueprint that our ancestors have provided for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Over and over again.
Yes, we are the new ancestors for the next generation to come, and our ancestors laid it all out in the playbook of how to, when it seems like you don't have the money or the power or any of those things, still how to create change on levels nobody saw coming.
And to do it in community in a way that is baffling in capitalism. So I've been thinking a lot about cooperative economics, how that, saved us in some places, and also Black philanthropy, how what it looks like on the ground, we've talked about that before, how we don't let people fall through the cracks, by making sure that the people who live around us, in our families, in our communities are still taken care of, regardless of what the system is doing. I've been wrestling too with there's a bit of a philanthropic tangent, but you just made me think of it. I've been thinking about the way that Black people lead some systems, have actual power. We often say Black people don't have any power, but in some cities, Black people run government agencies, they run school systems, and there are so many. I just wrote about this bureaucratic levers you can pull to make things happen without having to pay attention to the policy change or whether the governor cares about it. There are so many things you can do on the ground as long as everybody agrees this is our thing. We don't have to be out there telling everybody what we're doing.
Got to learn how to move in silence sometimes. And this is exactly what our ancestors laid out. When they closed those church doors and said, we're about to have a meeting and talk about what really needs to go down, they closed the doors.
Use that school money and create an adolescent literacy thing. Don't nobody need to know what you're doing. You can still have class every day. You can still do all the things, but this is what we gonna do in here.
I had a whole music program that was about music and also not about music. Like, I mean, it's very important for us to learn to use the tools that are out here ultimately on smarter levels than what it seems like, because of course anybody who sees you coming, always waving the flag of this or that or liberation is going to automatically light up those defenses. But that's where you need to do the planning work, the quiet work, the quite unsexy work a lot of times, of laying out the foundation of what needs to be true in order for us to have the people power that we need to build other things. And that's what I think is important. And that's what I think the insight that we have had working in philanthropic spaces. It's not always going to be about getting a grant written that says Black liberation
Free
on
to
top.
Black people.
Right.
Give me $2
Girl,
million. That's what I'm doing.
right. Right now, today, let me go cash this check to free my people. No, it's not always going to happen, but it always has to be in mind. And we've got to figure out ways to move that allow us to build the more fundamental pieces. And I believe that those ways and means and dollars are out there. Like, if people only knew, Adrian, the things that we have known and seen about how much money is really out there, they would riot in the streets every single day ending in Y. They would be so incensed and angry to know that these people who on, or claim they're doing good work and they're doing good and this is all for community, if they were actually see inside of some of these organizations. I don't know if you got a chance to read that kind of, I want to say expose about Lauren Powell Jobs HQ organization that she founded. I mean, millions of dollars going towards this organization, supposedly doing, good work to revive high school, around the country, whatever. So much waste and shenanigan inside of that vehicle. It would, I mean, if you're in one side of one of those high schools dying for a grant for $5,000 to do, what you need to do and provide for these young people, and you saw that, it would just make your stomach
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and right. I think I want to say it's in the Chronicle of Philanthropy, but either way, the point is it's not just about waste, it's about a real lack of understanding, a fundamental lack of understanding of what that capital can do. And the more proximate you are to community, the more clear it is to you what even just a minor investment of capital can do in the right hands. But we've also seen it again happen in the create harm because it is fundamentally in the wrong hands. And so it's frustrating for us to have this knowledge and understand what it might take to unlock those doors. But ultimately, what we need to do is kind of connect arms and put our arms together and say, we're not going to be used anymore as a tool of good PR because something fundamentally ain't clean in the milk. And what we're going to do here is insist that you do better. And we're not going to let you create a third wave of philanthropy again that creates a machine that's fundamentally flawed and fundamentally causes harm. We are going to stand in the gap and we are going to insist, we are going to demand, we are going to say that we are not going to be used as your tools anymore.
We have to close out our conversation, but I want to do this mapping for folks so they can hear what we're saying on this third wave. So the first wave, of course, are the industrialists, the robber barons, the Carnegies, the Carnegies, and the Mellons and the Rockefellers. Then we had the first round of tech billionaires or tech millionaires, now billionaires, right? Microsoft, Apple, the Dellionaires that we used to talk about in Austin, like that group and the Chan Zuckerberg, right? And now we have the AI money. So the AI money is coming on, and that's the third wave. And one of the things that I appreciate you for bringing that up is that I reflected again and I thought, oh my gosh, in every wave, these people who've made all of this money think they are smarter. They think they know better about what people need and what changes need to look like. And their perspective is around fixing people, not necessarily around fixing systems. And for those who say they want to fix systems, they really don't want to dig deep enough into the issue of mindset changes for people with power to do that. And so we are now going to, here it is again. And as we close out, I really want to hear your thoughts on and of course, I did this to you every time. We're closing out. Here's a big question. Fix it. I want to hear your thoughts on if a group of us, can get together and talk to people or get access to help folks understand these AI billionaires, understand where the money really needs to go and how deep it needs to go to actually fix problems that they have identified. What would we say to them? How would we educate them?
I think it's a question that we need to wrestle with fairly quickly. And I saw a piece, a response, and I apologize. I don't remember the name of the author on LinkedIn, but she put together a very well thought through kind of matrix of saying, okay, if we anticipate that this third wave of billionaires essentially is going to use philanthropy to hoard capital and put it in a bunch of DAFs and do some really superficial level stuff. What would make more sense is if they really invested in this idea of democracy and did this and this and this, and it was well thought through, and she made all cogent points. But what I thought was one of the examples she used, for example, was that one area where they could invest like significantly that would bear real fruit for democracy was in journalism, like real journalism. If there were a machine, that really funded real journalism, it would be, to everyone's collective benefit. And I thought about it and I said, these are the people who have the most to hide. I don't see a scenario where they're going to invest in people who have the time and the means to expose their mistakes. It's a great concept. I wish it were true. But when we think about the areas that these billionaires, what they are actually trying to build and what they are incentivized for to use philanthropy to do and what they're disincentivized for it to do, I think we've got to again think about how we counter systems. So how do we use the money that will flow from all of this to increase our own systems that then we control, that can really be those hubs of critical thinking, that can be those hubs to expose and to shine a light and to organize and to mobilize. It is not a mistake that the current wave has not funded progressive mobilization anywhere near on the scale that it needs to be. That's not a mistake. That's not an accident. Those folks were not incentivized to actually put lots of money in those places, right?
It's like the industrialists funding labor unions, or the environmental protections, or like the second wave funding international human rights and also labor issues, or the like no, or I say this all the time, or in Memphis, whenever the conversation comes up around the reason people are poor is because they don't have any money, pay people better. The people giving the money are the ones making the money from not paying people. Like they're not gonna fund discussions, conversations about that.
They're not funding somebody to fight for 15 or anything else, right?
Yes, right.
So we've
Mhm.
got to understand that that is part of the game plan, part of the design, and we've got to break the design. We've got to figure out ways to find other capital sources to fund that fundamental, like, ground building work that needs to be done. And if they wanna give us a little money here or there to do other kinds of things, okay, that's fine. But we can't over rely on that. We've got to find ways to kind of be smarter about the things that we know and we have learned the hard way really need to be built.
Well, on that, I am going to close out with a final little statement about how we can use resources we get to do what we want to do. Like, I wanted to fund neighborhood improvement, but I really was trying to fund democracy. And how we also have to call each other out on misusing that money. Just because you put the same name on it or whatever, it doesn't mean you're really doing the work, and we can't afford to do that anymore. So let's talk about that the next time, about that slow lane. I really like the way you talked about the slow lane of getting people healed. So I'm calling it in advance. That's what we're talking about next time.
Well, another fabulous discussion with you. We could do this all day, every
All
day.
day, every day. We
Yes.
can make money doing this, so we got to make money.
Yes,
So
we need some kind of
that's it.
marathon. So
We
true.
know we can find you on LinkedIn. So if
You
people want to have
absolutely
you
can
come
find me.
and
Amber and
talk to them
Templeton.
about this on
Yes.
LinkedIn, where else can people find you?
That's the best way to find me right now. Again, I'm continuing to build a couple of things where people can find me, but they can also find This Week in Purgatory. They can find it on LinkedIn. The first few comics are out there, and there's definitely more loading. And some other you'll see me out in these streets. But I can't wait for our continued conversation about this, Adrian, because if we don't talk about it, please know that somebody is talking about the exact opposite in rooms
Opposite.
again and again.
That is the lesson. That is the lesson. Somebody's out there doing this work, and it may not be in our favor.
Absolutely. So we got to
Mm-mm.
continue to put it out there and
Yeah.
challenge
Mhm.
ourselves to do better.
Thank you so much, Amber Hamilton. I
Thank
love
you
these
so much.
conversations, like I say. I'll see you in a few months.
Yes, the
Okay.
fight, the struggle continues. We in it.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Bye now.
Bye, Internet.